Never get old, Krusty the Clown. My Will Ferrell as Harry Carey. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Pit Press podcast, except this is not a podcast. This is a live stream pregame show. Hope everybody is feeling all right. I'm a little exhausted. It's not like I'm performing open heart surgery for like 12 hours, but been running on caffeine, been running on tea and coffee the last 3 days, and feeling pretty good today. Late night last night, and just in case you didn't know, now you know, UNM in the semifinals, Mountain West Conference beat Colorado State 74-61. That means we are here to preview the Mountain West Conference Championship game between San Diego State and the University of New Mexico. Kind of feels like old times. I'll introduce the gang here, but we want to thank those that make this show possible. Abrazo Homes, Affordable Solar, Hydro Bar, and of course our friends at Turquoise Desert Taproom. If you're looking for a place to watch the Mountain West Conference Championship, it's on 4 o'clock on CBS. Head over to Turquoise Desert Taproom. It's right by the Santa Ana Star Center there. Excuse me, Santa Ana Star Casino, not Santa Ana Star Center. Well, it's right off 528. It's right. Get out, go straight. You're right there. Make a left, I think. We're very good directions on my like 4 hours of sleep. I'll introduce everybody that's joining us.
Right there. Make
Sorry, I was echoing. I don't know who else got me on. Introduce everybody, the gang as usual. Still in that from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. My business partner in this endeavor, Mr. Eric Malton. How are you, senor?
Hey, I'm good. I'm pumped for the game to start. Looking forward to talk some matchups, bubble watch breakdown, and a few other topics that we got going. Let's jump into it.
You can follow him at NM Sports Capper on Twitter. He's in his bunker, his bracket bunker at his parents' house. His name's Mr. Jacob Neff. Hey man, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You had to come over here to watch the game, have a little party to watch the Mountain West title game, but ready to break it down, talk about matchups. Like Eric said, some of the bubble teams that we need to lose, all the different situations. So excited to see them play in the conference championship again. It feels right.
Coming to you from Santa Cruz, California today. He's spanning the globe. He's a two-time offensive state line for San Juan Mendoza on the St. Pius Sergeants football team, and played for Damian Segura on the boys basketball team at St. Pius the 10th. I heard a commercial this morning on the radio, and they referred to it as St. Pius X, and I don't know. I'm not religious. I don't really care, but it just pissed me off. But anyway, that's not here nor there. Mr. Richard Thompson, how are you, man?
I'm good. I am a former X-Man myself. Too bad St. Pius went down on both the girls and the boys side, but fired up for the Lobos. I think it's the 4th time they faced San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference Championship. UNM winning 2, San Diego State winning the last matchup in 2018. So let's hope we can carry it forward today.
I remember watching that in Brooklyn in 2018, and I forgot to cue this up. Richard. Well, I guess we'll get straight to it. You can tell I'm very enthused. UNM beats Colorado State 74-61. San Diego State manhandles Utah State, savagely beat them 86-70. It's the usual suspects. I mean, when this league was kind of up and coming about 15 years ago, and then you got into the early part of last decade, it seemed to be San Diego State and UNM. UNM won it 3 straight years in a row in 2012, 2013, and 2014, and I believe that they did beat San Diego State in all those games. And it kind of became a Utah State, San Diego State affair. But to last night's game, an 11-0 run to start the game. Colorado State fought back. I had said it, and I'm the biggest player hater at this Lobo ball. I didn't think there was a doubt they were going to win. I think they're feeling it. We will get into today's episode, and we're not on today's live show. We're not rushed as we were the last couple days when we only had about 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes to do it. I thought UNM came out with a lot of energy. I think it kind of shows Colorado State is a pretty good team. They couldn't shoot the ball worth crap last night. I don't know if they looked tired. They didn't beat a Nevada team that apparently had the flu going around. The first name's escaping me, but McIntosh, he did not play. He was a key contributor for the Wolfpack, and Steve Alford. But I don't know, when they jumped out to an 11-0 lead, I know Colorado State kind of crawled back in. But to me, there was never a doubt. I once kind of San Diego State won, I thought, man, it's going to be UNM and San Diego State. I thought they looked good. I think an emphasis was defensive, but just general thoughts. And I'll start with each of you. Rick, what did you think about the win over Colorado State?
Just most impressed on the defensive end. I think they only gave up maybe 25 points in the first half, coming off only giving up about 30 to Boise in the first half the night before. And I think that's going to be important tonight. But last night, I thought Clifford and Stevens were going to give them problems, but they couldn't throw the ball in the ocean, especially with Stevens with that calf injury. Give him credit for hanging in the game. He did make some three later on and some other tough shots, but hats off to House. That's the first game I've really seen him control his emotions. And you even saw his dad look at him and say, "Stay locked in." And I think his dad finally had a conversation with him after seeing what the hell he was doing on the court the night before, almost getting body slammed after probably doing some things he shouldn't have done in the end of that game. And last night was the most locked in I've ever seen him. I think 8 assists, a willing passer, and taking gambles at the right times. And I was just really impressed with his play along with Toppin. Toppin is just dominating down there, and he needs to stay out of foul trouble tonight, I think, if Lobos are going to have a good shot.
Neff, the ball is in your court. Your thoughts about the game last night that didn't start till like what, 10:45 our time?
Yeah, really good. I mean, an all-around team effort is what I saw. Lots of contributors. The bench got it going. 16 points off the bench between Amzil and Baker. He's still hitting a couple threes. That is going to be a huge deal for the Lobos because we know how much they struggle shooting threes consistently. If he can make a couple a game, it just makes them a different team because they have, an extra 3-point shooter that can come in and shoot some threes. But last night, what I was most impressed about was them not forcing a lot of 3-pointers. They shot 13 threes last night. That's when this team is most effective. They are not a good 3-point shooting team. They know they're not a good 3-point shooting team, but they have to get the big guys going, keep them involved. That's when UNM is at their best. It also shows that last night showed that they don't have to just get out and run. They can actually play a half-court offense if they do it effectively. And last night they did. They had a really good offensive rhythm going when they slowed it down. And I think that's super important because you have to kind of save your legs. You can't run up and down the court for 4 days in a row. And they've had some points where they've been able to slow it down, like against Air Force winning by 30. Boise State game was pretty intense till the end. Colorado State, they kept it pretty close, but last night they seemed like they were in a little bit of energy saving mode too in certain areas of the game. But good overall contributions from the big guys. I said we needed to out rebound them. We didn't. We only lost the battle by 5. We definitely can't give up as many offensive rebounds as we did yesterday because this team will definitely take advantage of that. Whereas yesterday, Colorado State was missing a lot of bunnies, I think if I'm not mistaken, I heard that they missed 12 layups in that game. San Diego State's not going to do that. So, overall good game. This is the way the Lobos need to play. And I was really impressed with their defense. Like you guys said, I mean, I said it pregame. If the defense keeps rolling like this, they're going to be in every game because that's what they feed off of. So overall, really impressed last night. And I think that they could carry it over into today.
They shot 45% from the field, UNM, 5 of 13 from 3 for nearly 38.5%. Looky, 13 of 16 from the free throw line, 81%. I didn't realize they only got to the line 16 times, and Colorado State only got to the line 8 times. I still think Nick Clifford is, man, he looks like a nephew had said it. He looks like he's got an NBA body. Like he definitely looks like an NBA player. Before we get to Eric, some of our regulars that have joined us in this BS affair. Ice Baby, excited to be a Lobo fan in Lobo land. I'm not making fun. I thought that was like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. Sorry. Excited to be a Lobo fan in Lobo land. Looking forward to March Madness. But before we got some business to take care of against the Aztecs. There's your finished sentence. And Lionel Hutz's alias, Miguel Sanchez. Big defensive adjustment was Lobo Bigs keeping their feet inside and out, not reaching and avoiding foul trouble as CSU avoids contact. SDSU seeks contact, so may not be as effective. Today's Lobos will have to make free throws and play through contact. There will be plenty. Eric, Rick, you're in agreement there, but Eric, your thoughts on the game last night?
I thought defensively they're locked in. I mean, they're just overall rotation, them being able to double down on some of the bigs, double team. They were kind of throwing some double teams at Stevens when he got the ball. Nate Clifford kind of forcing the ball out of those guys' hands, and the weak side rotation and just the guys kind of moving around looked like they were kind of in this fluent motion, and it looked good. And one thing that you guys didn't mention was that first game against Air Force. Well, I think 3 straight games they had forced their opponents to shoot under 30%. So that's kind of a trend, or back-to-back games that we're starting to notice that the Lobos are kind of turning up the heat on the defensive side and making it really challenging for the opponents to get off good in-rhythm shots. And man, I love the on-ball pressure. I think that's a big piece to it, but I think the overall rotation of the defense has kind of impacted the game and put a lot of these guys in some unfamiliar situations. They're not necessarily being sped up, but they could be sped up mentally. And Nico Medved made a comment about that in the post-game presser last night. Just they're being forced to play at a pace that they're not comfortable playing at. And a lot of that is just the UNM defense and the overall pressure that they're putting on. Offensively, I thought they were in a good rhythm. They kind of took a step back there when Donovan Dent got that technical foul, which I thought was kind of completely unwarranted. There was no warning. The ref was quick to give him a quick tee, and he picked up a foul right before that. So he went straight to the bench, didn't play the rest of the first half. And I thought that their offense kind of struggled a little bit, but they did make do. They ended the half on an 8-0 run to kind of go into halftime with an 8-point lead, and they never gave it up after that. I think Colorado State ended up cutting it to 5 or 7 at one point, but then the Lobos just kind of locked in and Toppin. Thank God for Toppin, because he kind of, when the Lobos were sputtering there towards the end of the second half, he stepped up and made a few big buckets and really just kind of sealed the deal for them. But overall, I thought it was a good team effort and was really impressed with Amzil and Baker able to knock down some threes. I think that's going to be kind of a big key for them, some guys to look out for.
I'm glad we've got about an hour and a half to talk if we make it that long. I think the contribution from I think Jamal Baker Jr. has kind of found his stroke. He's looked pretty good. I felt like he was playing, but he was like non-existent towards the end of that at the end of the regular season. And obviously Amzil, co six man of the year in the conference. I thought that technical was very odd, because then they showed the ref telling I forgot his name, but his last name's Palmer on Colorado State. He's got the headband, and he hit he hit a pretty good 3 in the first half to kind of keep Colorado State within striking distance. But they teed up Dent, and that ref was across the court, and he teed him up, and then CBS Sports got him telling Palmer to like shut up or something. I don't know. That was really weird. I wonder if Dent and that official have a history this year, or something was said earlier. But that was there to me. There was a little bit of a double standard there. Again, if you've listened to our podcast, I've kind of, in my journalism career, I never mentioned the refs more than I have this year. And somebody that I follow that's a capper has mentioned he thinks that it's going to cost the officiating is going to cost, and Jacob, you've said it too, but this is somebody nationally that the officiating is going to catch up with the Mountain West Conference in the first round. we'll know matchups in about 26 hours. Eric, say something. You look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I had made that comment about the officiating. Oh gosh, this was probably mid-season. About what once this translates into the big dance, these officials in the whole country, right, in this big dance, they're going to let a lot of these teams play through contact. These games are physical, they're high paced. You got to go in and you got to play with this unique toughness in order to advance. And the Mountain West officiating just doesn't allow that. Like we saw so many hand checks, and so that capper that you're mentioning there is spot on with that, and it just kind of jives with what we've kind of all been talking about. You got to let some of this stuff go. Like I'd imagine this game tonight or later today is going to be extremely physical. You got to let them play through some of that stuff. Even if they're hip riding them, checking them, let them play through it. That's the only way that they're going to be able to compete with these more physical teams in like the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12. You watch those games get extremely physical, and the Mountain West is just not that. The officials don't let it get to that point.
Neff, I feel like you might want to interject there because you did make a comment on Twitter last night.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be nice if the Mountain West officials just could keep their handprints off of one game. I mean, that was my comment last night, and it's no matter what game you look at, it's like the San Diego State Utah State game. Getting guys, key players from each team in foul trouble very early in the game, it changes the whole directory of how the game is played. And then last night, Dent throws his hands up in the air. He didn't show anybody up. It wasn't right in front of his face. He wasn't pointing at somebody or saying anything. It was the shortest fuse for a technical in a game that means something that I've ever seen. And then you've got Palmer on the other end of the court, literally like the next series down the court, commits a foul. He's right in the referee's face. He's saying something. They don't say anything to him. And then in like another 4-minute period of stretch, or next 4 minutes down on the other side of the court, the ball goes out of bounds, and he's complaining to the ref again, and the ref's like, go, and he's giving him another warning. It's like, you can't officiate games. You have to consistently officiate games. You cannot do it one way for one team and another way for another team. And it's just, it seemed really weird. Besides that technical last night, there was a lot of contact, but they let them play through it for the most part, which was fine. But, plays like that are big because you give Donovan Dent 2 fouls in literally not even seconds apart from each other. And then now one of our best players has to go sit on the bench for an entire half. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Just nobody came to watch you play. Everybody came to watch the players play. That's what I get from it. Just let the players play. You guys call the fouls that need to be called, but don't stick your nose in and try and, do whatever you're going to do there. So yeah, just, I hope today we could get a clean game where they're not calling ticky-tack stuff or, any technical fouls or anything like that. Just let the guys play and see who's the best team out there.
I think even Coach Tom Moser had mentioned on Twitter, and I reached out to him to join us here, and he could not make it. Lost my train of thought there. That the San Diego State game, Utah State game, was kind of poorly officiated as well. And when I had it on, I was watching UVA and NC State, which right before we went live after that game, that was a phenomenal ending. Unless you were a UVA better, I mean, I don't know what to make of the officiating, and I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought because I was thinking of half a dozen things, and then I wanted to read this theory of caps. There were a lot of plays under the basket that were let go surprisingly. I don't want to sit here and talk about officiating because I think it deteriorates from, what we're trying to do here with this show and what we do with the podcast. But I just think the way that it's been officiated this year has been a little no, well, not a little wonky, but it's been wonky.
Well,
and I'm
I
sure
think I think both teams have to react early to how it's being called. If it's being called tight, we know they're going to call 25 fouls against us on Ledee. Ledee gets to the line probably more than anyone in the conference, and he's about, I think, better than 70% foul shooter. So he's able to make a good amount. And, it's going to be dicey if Nelly or Toppin get 2 fouls early because we don't really have someone that can match up with both Pal and Ledee if they're on the court at the same time, I don't believe. And Nelly to me has been really struggling offensively. Yesterday, he looked kind of lost on offense, and he's not really catching and finishing a lot of plays as of late. His defense has been outstanding. Some of those blocks, he's sending them to Mars or breaking the glass when he's blocking those. The same with Toppin. So I think they're definitely capable. But if they come out and see the refs are calling it a little tight, they need to adjust. And I think they should begin the rotations a little earlier and not wait so long to make their first subs in the game. House has logged more minutes probably than anyone the past 3 days. I had the numbers here. I think he's played close to 90 minutes already in the last 3 days, but I don't want to hear about tired legs. These guys are all 20 years old. We all used to play basketball every day. You don't get tired of playing basketball, right? At that age, you could play 2 or 3 of these games in one day when it's on this type of level. So I don't think fatigue will be a factor for UNM, but I still want to see them get into their rotations and maybe even get Mushila in early just to get him a taste of the action in case you need him later on in the game with foul trouble.
One of the cappers that I follow that was talking about the officiating, and then he was talking about how San Diego State's ugly, but when they're on, they're on. You can follow him at Jeff Rosa, and he tweeted out his full card. He's usually got a play of the day. His play of the day is UConn -9, but his full card he's playing today. UConn -9, Oregon +2.5, New Mexico money line, and he posted a picture of the Lobos. So he's on UNM. That's a new one. I think the biggest thing from, and I lost it because I opened up Twitter, was one for the last 3 or 4 days, or 2 days actually, is the Jalen House Patrick Mahomes comparison, with his voice. Not one to knock physical appearance, but it's quite comical. But in regards to that, he had said, Evan Washburn of CBS Sports asked him post game last night, how he was feeling, how he was doing. And of course, Jalen House responded that he's got one more in him. We've always talked about how much he loves wrestling. He says he loves Randy Orton. So maybe I can't believe I'm making this reference. He's got some Viper in him, Rick. It just made me think about this. Hey, Rick, happy 316 day again.
Hell yeah, brother. Let's get that title belt, brother.
Kind of moving on to, and we will get into some bracket bubble talk, our own version of bracketology with Neff and his bracket bunker. That's not Bristol, Connecticut. Some keys for this afternoon's game. Eric, you said that backcourt matchups, Trammell, Butler, Reese Waters, Micah Parrish, all played well against Utah State. House, Dent, and Mash mostly. I think kind of Jamal Mashburn took a few shots from the top of the key last night, and it was like, what the hell are you doing? So on this 316 day, I throw it over to you, Eric. Your thoughts on what your bullet point that you sent me there before we jumped on the live stream here.
Yeah, San Diego State is deep in the backcourt, man. They got Darian Trammell, who we clearly know what he's capable of. I mean, that guy was the MVP of the regional last year at March Madness that sent him to the Final Four. And then you got Butler, who hit probably one of the biggest shots in the country last year to send San Diego State to the national championship game. And then you got 2 guys that don't get talked a lot about now, but Micah Parrish, he's an elite shooter for San Diego State. And last night he had a really good game, was really efficient, just kind of inside out, right? He's kind of an unorthodox guy. He's a lefty, can get to the rim, has a nice mid-range game, but he can also knock down some threes from the outside. And then you also have Reese Waters, who kind of didn't really surface for San Diego State until late. Didn't really see a whole lot of offensive production come out of him. But yesterday, I'm not sure what his point total looked like or what his stat line looked like, but I know he had a decent game. He finished around the basket. They just have a few pieces, some elements that they can kind of rotate in and out. And Dutcher is kind of notorious for not really sticking with the same kind of rotational guys at all times. He kind of mixes it up. So really they have some offense in the backcourt to kind of throw at UNM, and what you guys were just talking about with how much gas is left in UNM's tank and them having a little bit deeper of a backcourt rotation and just elite guys. Not only going to get after you defensively, but they can also fill it up on the offensive side. And then for UNM, I thought we got a heavy dose of Jalen House last night. We got good House. Didn't really make a whole lot of mistakes, no turnovers. Donovan Dent was also really good in the pick and roll game, was getting to the basket easily. He was finishing. He was actually really effective on the defensive side with some steals. And these guys are locked in on the defensive side. It just Mash didn't really have an impact on that game. Didn't really show his offensive prowess. I think at one point he was like 1 for 6, 1 for 7, or 0 for 6, 0 for 7 in the second half alone. Was really forcing some tough shots. I think he was just trying to get to see one of his shots go down, but some of the shots were ill-timed early in the shot clock. Not a whole lot of ball movement on some of those possessions. So I'd like to see them kind of get into rhythm and have all three of those guys contribute, because we all know very well that they're capable, but it's just about timing and kind of spreading the wealth a little bit. So really looking forward to kind of watching and breaking down that matchup in the backcourt, because it's a heavy dose of elite basketball, especially out on the West Coast, and they're playing on primetime CBS, and the whole nation's going to tune in.
Back to Miguel Sanchez, Liddy's second foul pushing Osabor in the back with two hands as he cut to the basket was notable only because it was called. It gets away with a lot of push-offs. I didn't see that. Neff or Rick, could you comment to that if you were watching the game?
Yeah, I mean he does do it a lot, and he's very physical, right? So that's going to be the key, right? And I know that a lot of people have said this in the Mountain West, or people that follow it, is they do let Ledee play pretty physical, right? And so if that's how you're going to let him play down on the block, then you have to let his defenders have a little bit of leeway too, because if it's called ticky tack on defense, but you're giving the offensive player, the advantage or the ability to, just shove your way in, or give that, put that forearm in there. If you're not allowing them to put that forearm on the back, or whatever the case is, to hold your ground, you're going to be in trouble with them, and he's going to get you in foul trouble because he creates contact. And so I really hope that if that's the way they're going to let him play on offense, because you saw how Amzil got a couple on him in the last game, where he was, posting up, and he was getting pretty aggressive to try and get his positioning on the block. If they're going to allow him to do that, they've got to allow the defender to have their, hold their ground. So I will say that, yes, I think that Ledee does, get away with a lot of contact down there. But if that's the way it's going to go, then please call it the other way on the defensive end to let them stand their ground.
He had 22 points against Utah State in the rubber match there, 8 of 14. He's a modern day Julius Peppers, is what his comparison was when Julius Peppers played at UNC before he, ended up becoming a Pro Football Hall of Famer. And Jaden Ledee, if you've listened to the podcast, I've always defended San Diego State. I've always loved them throughout the years. I still say pound for pound, the best team I've ever seen in person was that 2010, 2011 San Diego State team with DJ Gay, Malcolm Thomas, Billy White, I think, and obviously Kawhi Leonard. They were phenomenal under Steve Fisher. Andrea S. Mash and now Toppin are ridden with flu. Apparently Utah was sick and played. Not Toppin. Sorry, Dent. I think it was reported on CBS Sports that Nevada had the flu, and that's why McIntosh wasn't there. If you're in the same,
McIntosh was a knee injury. I think
Knee
the
injury, okay.
thing started while they were in Vegas, and they thought that maybe they're passing it to other teams. But
Gotcha. I didn't hear the full story, so I won't. That's allegedly. Theory of caps again. Amzil matched up well on Ladie under the basket in the pit. He did play. Of course, we didn't forget that you didn't believe in the Lobos, Ryan. One more game, come on, Lobos. No, I didn't. Not after losing to Air Force at home and not winning really a true road game. Yeah, I didn't have belief there. Although that was Isaiah. Sorry, I thought it said David Frescott. No, didn't. No, there was no reason for me to. After what had happened in late January and early February. I mean, other than what they did to Nevada at home, that was really impressive. They outclassed, outmatched, outcoached everything with Nevada. Amzil did. Also, you guys always have the coolest hats. So there you go. There you go, Eric and Rick. Eric, you can plug it if you want.
Yeah, Albuquerque Duke Store on Central. Go hit up Steve.
Oh, put myself on mute there. Back to theory of caps. Amzil matched up well with Ladie under the basket in the pit. Rick, I might defer this question to you. I think he did, and he played really well. Everybody played really well that game.
I mean, he battled, but he got body slammed and suplexed, and they didn't call anything a few times, and then they finally called it on Ladie. I don't think we want Amzil guarding Ladie if we're going to have success. It's going to have to be a combination of Nelly and Toppin with a double down coming from the guards. And, Ladie is going to get his. I think what Lobos need to worry about is making shots hard for the rest of San Diego State because the last few games we held teams, I think, to 30% shooting around there in both games. If we can do that, San Diego State is not a great shooting team. If we force them to shoot jump shots and don't let them get to the hoop outside of Ladie, I think the Lobos can have success. So I don't think we want Amzil being the primary defender on Ladie today, but there will be times where he switches down and he's going to battle. And he can also stretch the court, obviously, on offense. But it's going to be a concerted team effort. Like we've seen the last few games, everyone's willing to help right now and help the helper. Even Mash, I saw him last night. He had a terrible game on offense. His defense was pretty good. I saw him denying the ball. He had his head on his swivel. So his effort was there, even though it wasn't falling for him. And I think everyone on the team right now is just kind of locked in on the defensive end. And when you have JT Top and the vacuum cleaner sucking up the rebounds, they can turn that into their own type of fast break if they're not turning the other team over today.
Hasn't Darian Trammell hit obviously against UNLV, that boneheaded airhead play by UNLV at the half? I don't know who inbounded it, but it was like 1.3 on the clock or something, and he inbounded it and took the shot. It stole the ball, took the shot from about half court and went in. And I think they did that against Utah State. I would hope that there's not a third time's the charm for UNM. But Jacob, one of the things you were saying about tonight is, every game, limit the turnovers. I would say if UNM does that, they would probably win the game.
Yeah, the first game that they played, they they limited the turnovers pretty well. They only had 10. I think in the second game in San Diego State, they had 19. And you could see the difference in those games. You got to limit the turnovers against this team because they're going to push you defensively. And it's going to be super important, I think, in this game more than ever. I know that House had a really good game last night with taking care of the ball and distributing it, but I'd really like to see Dent be primarily the ball handler today, just because he has a little more control. I think that his handles are a little more polished than House, and it's going to be important that you don't drive into the lane like crazy and let them get deflections and then start a break themselves, or just turn it over because every possession is going to matter in a game like this. And I think that if you go back to the first game that we played, Dent didn't score very many points, but he was primarily the ball handler and he set up the offense. He worked everybody into it. I think that's what we're going to need today. So I think if Patino was wise today, he's letting Dent bring the ball up the court on when we're going to be setting up for half court offense and running it that way. So that would be pretty key. And obviously you always want to limit the turnovers, but against a team like this that feeds off of it, that would be my my strategy going into this game is letting Dent be primarily the ball handler in this situation.
Neff, I just want to let you know that Nebraska is beating Illinois in the semifinal of the Big Ten tournament, and that's fantastic. Obviously, a little bit of a UNM connection there. Last year's player, Josiah Alec, on that team, and he's been a starter, and he's played very well. Go ahead, Eric.
What do they call that player from Nebraska? Is it Tamanaga? Tamanaga?
Yeah.
Tamanaga?
Yeah,
Tamanaga. What's his nickname though? He has a nickname.
Well, I don't know what his nickname was, but they were calling him at halftime. I actually liked it. After the Wisconsin and Purdue game, they were calling him the Japanese jump shooter. I thought it was pretty good.
There you go. The Japanese Curry. That's what they were calling him.
He's
Japanese Curry.
Yeah,
that's pretty poor. We got to think of something better than that.
Yeah, it was Japanese. I just Googled it. It was Japanese.
The Japanese basketball player.
Yeah, it's God. I'm trying to be like PC or politically.
He was lighting it up in that quarterfinal, though. He's
fun to watch, man.
He was knocking down. Yeah. I want to add something to what Neff was just saying, though, about Dent being the primary ball handler. I think, I do agree with you. They're the most effective, especially because of that high pick and roll action that he has. He's really good at just kind of finding the open guys and a lot of no-look passes down to the bigs, and that's kind of where we really hoped that Nelly would become just a little bit better with his hands and catch some of those passes, but his ability to get into the lane and to be able to kind of carve and weave in there is elite. But we saw Jalen House do a little bit of that too, and they have, I wouldn't say they have similar games, but when House has the ball, you could tell that the overall pace of the game is just kind of picking up, and he's quick, he's hard to defend, and we're starting to see some flashes of him being able to do some of the things that Dent does in the pick and roll. He's having some nice feeds down low, but Rick really touched on it or really hit the nail on the head earlier with House has kind of finally figured out that he just needs to maybe slow down a little bit and just play more collective basketball mentally and just kind of take a step back and be able to kind of control the game and use his speed to his advantage. He doesn't have to play 125 miles an hour all the time. His quickness is going to get him there and kind of give him some advantages, but him being able to find those creases and be able to take advantage of those certain scenarios makes him a better player than most. But yeah, he's definitely stepped up in this Mountain West tournament, and they wouldn't be here without him. But those two guards in the high pick and roll and being able to distribute the ball, having one of those guys on your team is a really good addition. But having two, man, then that's a tough out.
Miguel Sanchez, I believe Weber Mushila can bother Ladie and help him wear him down along with burn some fouls, maybe draw a couple, maybe time to go to try two guards and a 1-3-1 with Amzil at 3 and Denton Baker at guard. Rick, your thoughts on that?
If you haven't touched on this a little bit ago, but Amzil is going to have to defend him at some point. Maybe Mushila. Webb isn't going to get in the game, unfortunately. So it's going to be, I think they're going to have to mix it up with double teams. If you're a big man defending him, they're not going to they can't allow him to catch it on the block. They got to push him to the elbow. Well, the problem is when he catches it on the elbow, the guards are curling around the top, and he is a pro at the dribble handoff. He's going to either hand it off to a guard curling or he's going to fake it. So it's imperative for our big man to stay awake on that dribble handoff, because they got to make sure that they know who has the ball once the guard comes around. It's even trickier than a pick and roll sometimes for the defender. And that's something that they do real well. A lot of times he'll keep the ball himself and slip to the hoop and just have a wide open layup. So it is going to be a team effort on defense. Everyone's going to have to come down on Ladie and make them kick it outside. But hopefully Mushila and our other men are not on the bench, are not the main defenders today against him.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake. You're good.
I was just going to make one little point. Let's just be honest. The Lobos aren't going to run a 1-3-1 zone. It's not going to happen. We haven't seen it all year. We haven't seen I don't think we've seen a zone all year, just to be honest with you. And it's not going to come in the championship game of the Mountain West Conference. This is going to be the Lobos change of pace, or the way that the Lobos change their defensive pace is by doing what they've done the last couple of games, which is draw double teams, rotate, and figure out a way to get the other offensive team, thinking quick, right? Because they can force turnovers off bad passes or teams that are, getting stuck in the corner, stuff like that. That's what the Lobos defensive change is. They're not, where other teams usually play man-to-man, then they go to zone. The Lobos aren't going to do that. They will only change their defense by going with those types of things. So if they're going to be most effective and try and throw something at San Diego State that's going to look different from just a man-to-man, it's going to be those double teams and then the rotational help on the backside. So that's what I would expect to see as the changeup that we get defensively. But Pitino will not run a 1-3-1 zone. It may be a suggestion that sounds good. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I wanted to. No, you got a good point, Jake, there on that. Yeah, they're definitely not going zone. They haven't done that. There's no reason for them to do that now. But what Rick was talking about earlier on the defensive rotation, or what you guys were both talking about, one thing that we hadn't discussed is the discipline of the defense. Yes, the Lobos are playing good on ball pressure defense, are rotating well. But one thing I would like to see them just really focus on is not jumping at every ball fake. Because a guy like Ledee, who is going to get someone up in the air like Nelly or Toppin when they are guarding him, he's going to get by you, he's going to take it to the hole, and then someone's going to end up fouling him, or he's going to get a bucket, or both, right? So, they just got to have the discipline to stay down on a lot of these ball fakes and guard with their feet and not necessarily try to go for every block, because it's not going to do any good by doing that. And against Colorado State, they jumped at every single ball fake over and over again, and Colorado State just didn't capitalize on it. They missed a lot of layups, but they had a lot of open looks inside the paint too. So I'm sure they're emphasizing on it, but just something that I saw last night that, man, it's like if they were just to do that and stay locked in on defense and keep rotating, then you're talking about taking these teams down into the shot clock, getting them stuck in the corner, kind of being real undecisive, putting them in some tough decisions to kind of force up some bad shots. So that was just kind of my take on what I saw last night.
And I think we got to give some credit to Baker on his defense the last few games. He's been getting hands on the ball, and his defense, to me, has really improved over the course of the year, where he was pretty slow at the beginning of the season and sometimes a liability. The last few games, Mash's minutes have been cut when they've faced taller teams, and rightfully so, because Baker's the better defender and shooter at this point in the season. And I think he deserves minutes along with Washington. I think Washington or Baker is going to have a fairly solid game tonight, along with Amzil, for the Lobos to hang in there. But Baker's been really great.
And that's the coaching adjustments that we were asking for during the season. It's finally coming through. And I know Ed's always to the component of it's not going to happen, but look what happens when it does happen. I mean, the last two nights when it's crunch time and Mashburn is, we know, yes, it's a 2-game sample, but he has been the defensive liability on this team on the defensive side. And then he's even potentially become an offensive liability in some cases because of his shot selection. The last couple games, he's been nowhere to be found unless it's like time to shoot foul shots and he's an 84% free throw shooter. They've made those adjustments by putting Baker into the game, and he's the more willing rebounder and the more willing defender. And that's what you have to do. If you want to win games in the NCAA tournament, the NCAA, conference championships or whatever the case is, you have to go off of matchups and what makes sense the most at the time. Pitino has finally figured that out, it looks like, or he finally is forced to figure it out, and it's working to UNM's favor because he's playing what makes sense. And this team has a lot of talent in certain situations. This is what you have to do to win games, and I'm finally glad that he's he has that do or die mentality now, which is what they've needed from the very beginning.
Baker's also a few inches taller and not just a few, but also weighs more. So he's more physical, can guard some of those bigger wing players that Mash typically struggles with. So yeah, well, really solid points there, Jake.
I wonder if he's fully healthy for the first time this year, because I said it earlier in the year, I thought he would be the X factor. He's kind of become one in the last 72 hours. Obviously that's been Amzil, but I wonder if he's fully healthy. And I'm not disregarding Amzil. I trust him out there. I mean, he's a veteran. He's 25 years old. He's been at Kentucky. He's been at Arizona. Fresno State's still high level basketball. He's been there and done that. I thoroughly trust him on the floor now. I felt like he was kind of a liability, but I think, as Ed has always said, when you see the ball go in the hoop, things change. And I think he's probably boosted up his confidence shooting. Don't quote me on that, but you guys see the defensive side better than I. I thought that last night. I again didn't play the game. The X's and O's is not my forte, but I thought Mashburn looked somewhat better on the defensive side when he had the ball and kind of dribbled to the top of the key and then he shot it. I was like, oh, here, it's the same old song. But I feel like this team collectively as a whole has played the last 72 hours has played less selfish. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Mash is a super smart player, man. He's been around, he's been in some key moments. He has the ability, and he's definitely locked in on the defensive side, or at least put more of a focus on that recently. So that we can definitely appreciate. But yeah, on the offensive side, I don't mind if he takes that shot, or even if it's a tough one and someone's in his face around that mid range, because we have seen him make it, and we have seen him make it at high volumes. It's just, if that's the first option and no one else is touching the ball in the possession, that's when I think we have a little bit of an issue with it. Move the ball around, get the defense moving on their feet, like get some of those guys that are near the basket away from the basket. And you do that with ball movement, guys kind of off the ball, moving on some back slips, some back doors, and just kind of get into an offensive rhythm. But some of those shots last night, man, the Lobos had a 14-point lead, and Mass started shooting early in the shot clock. No one else was touching the ball. That 14-point lead dissipated into a 7-point lead, and Patino had to call a timeout and make some adjustments from there. I mean, that's just, you can't afford to do that. Like, you just got to be a little bit more methodical on the offensive side, know how much time is going on, milk that shot clock a little bit, get some other guys involved. That's how you're going to find more open looks. That's when Mashburn's going to start being more effective, when the ball's moving and then that lane decides to open up, and that's when he can pull from the mid range. So that's.
I just want to make a point too. I think the difference between Baker and Mashburn, I think they're both smart on the offensive end. It's the maturity from Baker. It's the understanding of what's going on. He knows where his shot is. He doesn't take contested threes. He knows he needs to spot up, catch the ball, and shoot it. Where I think Mashburn, and it's still frustrating me because I've seen it. We've seen glimpses of it. If you haven't seen the basket, if you haven't seen a ball go in the basket, take the ball to the basket. This guy has such an advantage to take the ball to the hoop because everybody knows that he wants to pull up for a mid-range jumper. If they're thinking that in the back of their mind, imagine if he doesn't do it and he drives it to the basket, which he did a couple games, and he was getting contact at the rim because they think you're going to pull up. Now you have a step on him. You can draw fouls that way. You get to the line, you shoot a couple free throws. There's your basket that went in. There's your stroke. That's where he lives. Go shoot a couple free throws. I think that would really serve him a lot of good if he would do that every once in a while, because that could get him going. Unfortunately, it's only happened a handful of times this year, and when he just still isn't connecting, like, hey, if I need to see one go through, let me get to the line where nobody's in my face and watch one go through, and then maybe it'll snap and take its course, which is what shooters do, right? They get line, they see one go through, and then it's a different game. So that's what I see from Mashburn and Baker. But I think the difference between Baker and Mash is the maturity, and that's because, like we said, he's been around in college basketball for 7 years. So
We will get to our predictions. We wanted to talk about a little bit about bracketology and the bubbles, the bubble team. Thinking about Trailer Park Boys there. Amzil looked good when he played in Viejas. He did 11 rebounds. Played 30 minutes, 11 rebounds, 2 of 5, hit a 3, 11 rebounds, 10 points. That was a rough game. They in Viejas. We know it's a hard place to win. We will get into some predictions. We kind of wanted to talk about the bubble and who it's bursting for, who it hasn't burst for, moving ahead, because I think a lot of Lobo fans, especially those in Vegas right now, are quite upset with where ESPN bracketologist Joe Lenardi has UNM. He has them as the last team in, which I'm probably guessing is an assumption that he thinks they will lose today to San Diego State. He does have them playing St. John's in Dayton, and I think they're only doing that because it's father-son, and my joke is Patino versus Santino. But a lot of people are upset with that. One of the key things right now is South Florida, and I think a loss would probably kick them out of the tournament, which I think is a travesty for what they've accomplished and having the nation's longest winning streak. They're down to UAB right now in the American Conference semifinals, 62-59. Jacob, your thoughts on that? I think a loss would probably, for USF, kick them out. And then you have to worry about probably FAU. I think if FAU wins the whole thing, they are the only team from the American in, which is kind of insane, especially where Memphis was 2 months ago. Your thoughts on USF and what's going on there in Frisco, Texas?
Yeah, I think USF is going to get the old strength of schedule look, from that perspective. That conference didn't play as well as they thought they were going to play. Memphis really hurt that conference. FAU, even though they are still in at this point, they didn't have the season that they had or that people thought they would have. They do have some great wins, but I think overall that conference, that conference really was hurt by strength of schedule. Regardless of that game, in my opinion, USF or UAB, one of those teams is going to go to the championship to probably play FAU. And then FAU is going to need to win. So that way another bid isn't stolen. Regardless, I think if USF wins, that.
Oh no, did we lose him?
The bunker is collapsing.
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Is it collapsing? There's probably too many people here on the internet. Yeah, it's collapsing. I saw my thing start just spinning, and I was like, great. No, but I think if FAU just takes, I think if FAU just takes care of business, that's what we need in that conference. Regardless of what happens in that game today, it's going to be FAU needing to beat Temple. And then, I'm sorry, not are they playing Temple? Yeah, Temple, right? Yeah, and then FAU beating one of those teams. Yeah, so the best situation for Lobo land, for us Lobo fans, is FAU winning that tournament.
NC State with a nice comeback last night. They will play UNC for the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's 10-point spread. I think I've seen it fluctuate between 10.5, 10, 9.5. NC State winning that probably still, not probably, it still's a bid. Jacob, back to you. If North Carolina wins, does North Carolina sneak in with what they've done? And then you have UVA that lost. Mike DeCourcy of Fox Sports, he has UNM playing Virginia in Dayton, which is kind of the polar opposites of style of play, yet both defensive. I think that's quite an interesting matchup. And as a college basketball fan, that's something I want to see. I love all different styles of college basketball, but sometimes watching UVA makes me want to take a scissor and jam it in my eye. That's the style of they play. They don't shoot the ball very well. They play defense. When somebody takes a shot on the opposing team, 3 guys are already running back. But do you see, UVA is out I think, to Jerry Palm and Lenardi. Obviously, DeCourcy has them in as the last 4 in. Do you see NC State and UVA getting in, or is it going to be NC State has to win this thing?
Yeah, I think NC State has to win it at this point, just because they have a lot of losses. They have 14 losses. I understand they play in the ACC, but to me, the ACC has been down this year, and you could tell just in the conference tournament. Virginia got to play Boston College, and then they got to play NC State. They had a walk-in to the conference finals essentially for the ACC, and they couldn't take care of business. And Boston College and NC State forced overtime in back-to-back games against them. Their style of play just doesn't really it keeps the other team in the game. And so, for me, I don't think that they're that good of a team. I could, when you're scoring 50 points a game, it would be a really weird matchup with UNM and Virginia, because you're gonna have a team that wants to get out and run against a team that just wants to play turtle pace, right? And that would be an interesting matchup, but I don't think Virginia's done enough, in my assumption, to be in the tournament. We've talked about this. You want to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year. I think UNM is doing that. And Virginia isn't, obviously. And so I don't see how they would make it. And the only way that NC State makes it is if they beat North Carolina today, which is going to be a tough task, because North Carolina has something to play for. They now have them projected as the other number 1 seed in the bracket, with Tennessee losing, Arizona losing. North Carolina has something to play for today, which is good for Lobo fans, because they could run away with a number 1 seed. So I think that plays in our favor.
And NC State has a Virginia transfer in Casey Morsell, and then one of my favorite players in all of college basketball, DJ Burns, who's just an expletive tank. And he kind of willed them back in that game, but I know a lot of people were like, why the fuck don't you foul down 3? Because, Tony Bennett's won a national championship. I felt maybe he kind of coached them out of that. You had mentioned Oregon in the Pac-12. Colorado, I think some people have in. Obviously, a win cements that in. Oregon needs to win to get in, with everything I've read. Jacob, can you see Colorado getting in with a loss today?
I think so. They've beat a decent amount of teams. They've been on a roll for quite some time. If I'm not mistaken, they've won like 7 or 8 games in a row in the Pac-12. And now I know it's a down year for the Pac-12, but they beat Washington State last night, which is a top 25 team. They've beaten I think they beat Washington State in before the conference tournament. They're playing solid basketball. They do have a really good NBA prospect on their team, and I think that people want to see those types of players in the tournament. But they, overall, they have a top 25 in the net rankings, so I think they're probably in. It would really hurt us if Oregon somehow figures out a way to beat Colorado. And to be honest with you, it's actually a pretty even game. Colorado
2.5.
Yeah, Colorado needs to win that game for us, because that ultimately does put another team in. And what I get real skeptical of this time of year is, and I don't know if it will happen in the Pac-12, because it's not going to be a conference really anymore in college basketball, but you could see how hard these conferences are fighting for more teams to get into the tournament. You've seen the banners that they've been rolling at the Mountain West Conference Tournament for a 6-bid league. This is an opportunity where, if they think or they feel that Colorado is in the field for Oregon to steal a bid for that conference in its last year, I really hope that's not the case, but we need Colorado to win.
Miguel Sanchez, per Lenardi, UNM needs to win the Natty. They need to win the Mountain West Conference Tournament first, and to get a lock into the NCAA tournament. They don't need to win the Natty. You would need a DeLorean, I think, in another parallel universe. We appreciate you listening. Providence just needs to hit most of their layups pregame. Marquette beat Providence yesterday in the Big East semis, so they are probably out, although Kim English has done a very good job there. And if you didn't see him on Twitter, he was trending on Black Twitter, because people were wondering to know if he was what his relationship status was. And if you haven't seen that post game press conference, it's pretty funny, and his reaction was great. Mississippi
I think
Go ahead,
one
go ahead,
thing
Rick.
real quick, just on the bracket stuff. I think people have to realize that Joe Lenardi is not the end all be all just because he's on ESPN. There's probably about 50 other analysts that follow it much closer than him and aren't falling asleep when the West Coast teams are playing. And there's kids out there that have their own bracketology that watch every team in college 2 or 3 times the whole season so they can stay on top of this, and they all have UNM in, which I think is the right decision. So I don't think people need to read too much into Lenardi's garbage at this point.
I
I've
will
got
say
a
this, and I'm not a
yeah.
conspiracy theorist, Eric, but Mountain West is on Fox and CBS Sports. The ESPN does not have a contract with the Mountain West Conference. I'm not defending Lenardi. Yeah, he's not the end all be all. Mike DeCourcy had tweeted out, he's like, I've been doing this 40 years, and last year he had 67 of the 68 teams correct. I mean, I get it. It's a science. These guys are not in the committee room. And there's also been rumors that the committee has the teams selected pretty much by tomorrow morning. They kind of just tinker with the seating with what happens in the SEC. But you have the Big Ten, you have the SEC tomorrow. Those are 2 major conferences. You probably know who's going to get in. A&M will play. I think A&M's playing Florida right now. But Eric, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Go ahead, man.
No, you're good. I was just going to give you guys a new stat that I came across. It's called WAB, wins above bubble, and it comes from Tarvik. Tarvik is one of the new analysts, kind of like Evan Maya. He kind of runs a similar website. You guys might be familiar. So WAB, and he kind of gathered the teams nearest the cut line on the bubble. And for context, WAB calculates an expected winning percentage for an average bubble team in each game of the team's schedule, then subtracts that total from the team's total number of wins. Number 1 is Indiana State. Number 2, Virginia. 3 is New Mexico at 40th in the country. And then everyone else kind of behind that: Oklahoma, Seton Hall, Mississippi State, Providence, Texas A&M, Pitt, St. John's, Michigan State, and then Ohio State. For the Lobos to be top 3 in that list, I would think, this stat is kind of in their favor. It's not necessarily used. That's not what I'm kind of interjecting, but there's plenty of analytics and stats out there that kind of measure the in-game statistics that are available. So just something curious that I came across. Wins above bubble. That's a new one.
That's why I call it analytics. A&M is looking good against Florida. Buzz Williams. Yeah, Buzz Williams is great. When he was at Marquette and the old cheeseburger, I think that was like 10 years ago, he lost his voice and he was bitching at the NCAA how they couldn't just give the kids some cheeseburgers and how it was set up. I don't know. If you look that up, it was great. When Jay Moore had his own talk radio show on Fox Sports, he used to talk about how much he loved Buzz Williams. We are, again, approaching about 24 hours away from Selection Sunday. I think, Jake, just your last thoughts, and if any of you guys want to chime in. We are all graduates of a quote-unquote mid-major school. I think sometimes the committee does, I understand who you play. I think the committee sometimes does a disjustice to the mid-majors. How USF wins the regular season outright in the American and has to go to the NIT, to me, there's a lot of bullshit. I think them and FAU should be in. Obviously, if UAB wins, they are up 5 with about 5.5 minutes to go. So again, that helps UNM out. If USF is defeated today, I think USF should be in. I think obviously FAU should be in. It's not like it's the whole conference. It's 2 or 3. Look at this point right now. You probably have Nebraska and Wisconsin, although Wisconsin was ranked as high as 6th earlier in the season. And here's go. Schedule a better non-conference will help with that stigma. Yeah, it's true. But I have contacts that have worked for the men's basketball team. It is expletive hard to get somebody to come and play at the pit. That's why you had the Big West in UCSB. That's why you had UC Irvine. It's easier said than done. Teams don't want to come here and lose. I mean, when Lute Olson, when was that? They lost here in the 90s or 80s, and Lute Olson said he would never come back to the pit. And then I think in 99, UNM went there with like Lamont Long and beat them at the McKell Center. And they were highly ranked. Go ahead, Eric.
You know, it was a travesty is that early season tournament in Las Vegas, that Bulldogs Classic, where they beat Toledo, Pepperdine.
Right.
I
They
don't
could
know
have
if there
played
was a
Indiana
third
State.
team. They could have played Indiana State. They just didn't get that pairing. I mean, that would have put a lot of the Twitter beef or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, aside in all this bubble talk. Like that would have definitely put one above the other.
Neff, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's the truth. And another thing that I think is crazy is, like somebody like Colorado State is getting a lot of security into the tournament because they beat Creighton very early on in the season. And, if you look at what Colorado State has done over the last month of the season, they aren't good. They've struggled for the better part of the last month, and for them to be cemented into the tournament when we have the edge 2-3 against them. I mean 2-1 against them in the season. They've played pretty bad, coming down the stretch. That's a team that I feel like should be on the bubble more than UNM. I mean, UNM is now 7-7 in quad 1 and quad 2 wins on the year. That's a team that is playing pretty good against good competition, and I just don't see the whole thing. We've talked about it. You want to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year. Teams like Seton Hall didn't win a game in their conference tournament. St. John's won one. Yes, they got UConn, but they put themselves in that position.
They played very well against UConn.
They did play well, but they put themselves in that position to play those hard teams throughout the year because they didn't play very well, and that's the thing. If look at Oklahoma, they have them in the tournament still. They didn't win a game in the Big 12 conference tournament. I just don't see how you cement a team in like that when you have somebody like UNM that's gaining steam. You have somebody like, let's see who else is on the bubble right now that potentially could get in. You've got A&M who's winning in their conference tournament right now. They're doing all the right things at the end of the season. I think those teams should get the lift because they're playing better basketball at this point than what you've done earlier in the season. That there's a lot of different contributing factors that can help you with that. So that's just my take. But you can see, yes, scheduling, your games early on in the season and winning against one of those teams can really help you, obviously.
Isaiah, Oklahoma is 4-12 against quad 1. Something, Eric, I'll get to you. I'm just going to make a quick point. Texas A&M 2 years ago got to the SEC title game they needed to win, and they lost, I think, to Alabama. They got blown out that day. They did not make the tournament in the SEC. So I'd like Lobo fan to remember that, because if it's a loss today, it might be a little scary tomorrow. Eric, go ahead.
No, that's a good point. And I think about that and kind of like, man, could that happen to the Lobos? Because that would be devastating, but I wouldn't necessarily rule it out either. But to what Jake was just talking about and Colorado's argument, yes, they did beat Creighton early in the season. Colorado State, yeah, they had beaten Creighton early in the season when a lot of people were really high on Creighton. Colorado State's net skyrocketed after that. They beat Washington. They beat Boston College on a neutral, and then they beat top 30 Colorado team that might win the Pac-12. So they're comparing that to what New Mexico did. New Mexico did a lot of damage in their own conference, but in the non-con, I mean, what was their best win? UC Irvine? Like top ranked net team?
Long Beach State and UC Davis are playing.
So that's the argument. When you don't necessarily watch the two teams play side by side, but you want to measure them up side by side, looking at their resume and their scheduling and all that. That's what the argument is. That's why that conversation exists.
And unfortunately, the committee, they don't take into account who's hot at the end of the season or how many games you've won in a row, because That's just not something they take into account. If that was the case, of course, UNM is, riding high. Even UNLV was riding high before the tournament, and they might have had something to say. But unfortunately, they don't take that into consideration. But I agree with Jacob. They're playing much better than this Colorado team at this point in time. Much better than, Nevada was hot probably until that last game they had. But I would say they're probably the hottest team in the conference if they can close it out today, but that won't matter when they do the seeding tomorrow unless they win, right?
Yeah, well, what will matter though is back-to-back Q1 wins in the conference tourney on a neutral floor. So that definitely boosts their resume a little bit. And today's an opportunity for number 3.
Sorry, I was typing something. Wanted to go to this since we were talking about seeding and hypothetical scenarios. Isaiah, if we win tonight, if UNM wins tonight, what seed do you think they'll get at 10? I would think if they win tonight, you've just ripped off 3 wins in a row against Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, teams that you already had in the tournament. This is one of the few things I might be drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think Jacob will probably be looking at me like I'm crazy. But if you're going to give San Diego State a 5 seed and what UNM just accomplished on the road at a neutral site, I think it could boost them up to a 6 or 7 because they're their Ken Palm. I don't think that'll be the case. We've talked about the history. We've talked about 2013, how they lost to Harvard. They basically do the same thing in 2014 and get a 7 seed against Stanford. But I would think if they win today, you put them, you're probably realistically looking at an 8, 9, or 10. And that 8-9 matchup, man, that just probably is not, good news. But if you win, Jacob, your thoughts if they win today, where they get seeded in the tournament? Sound like a pilot there. Sorry.
I just think that their limit's going to be like an 8 or 9. I mean, you can see how much credit they're getting for beating Boise State and for beating, Colorado State on neutral courts. If those wins meant a lot to these guys that are projecting the tournaments, they would be cemented in by now. But if they really see them as bubble teams still after those 2 wins, even a win against San Diego State, who they say is going to be a 5 seed, I just don't think it could propel them to be any more than like a 9 is what I would say. However, it sounds like we need to win this game still according to some people. Some people say we don't. Some people say we do. I would rather them be on that 10 seed line just because they get to play a 2 seed instead of one of those 1 seeds, because you definitely don't want to go and get an 8 or a 9 seed game, win that game and play either UConn, Houston, North Carolina. I mean, Purdue has its, they look beatable. Edie is, obviously the best player probably in college basketball, but if, we would definitely struggle with him, but outside of him, that you can see that these teams, there's other teams that can beat them, and they've been beatable in the tournament before, obviously losing to St. Peter's, right? So they have the option, but I would much rather take my chances of beating one of these 2 seeds that seem to be inconsistent than some of these teams that have been planted at the top of college basketball for the entire year.
I would be afraid to play Houston. I really would. That's just my opinion. Do we have? We're extending into Las Vegas now. I sound like a pilot. Anybody else have any other thoughts before we get to predictions? We're about 40 minutes from tip. We've been talking over an hour. Again, UNM and San Diego State for the Mountain West Conference Championship. By the way, a 5-6 game. I think that shows what this league was this year, the Mountain West Conference in men's basketball. Game tips off at 4:00 on CBS. If you can't watch it, it's on Big Boy CBS. If you can't watch it, Rob Portnoy, Hunter Green have the call on the Lobo Radio Network. 96.3 or 770 KKOB. Anybody have any other final thoughts?
Do any of the listeners have any final thoughts?
Yeah, feel free to chime in.
Predictions, anything.
Las
I should have
Vegas
asked that a lot
stories.
earlier, but
Go ahead,
Las
Rick.
Vegas Stars.
I just said we want some stories
Any-
from Las Vegas. We want to hear about the drunkest Lobo fan falling down the bleachers.
Wasn't that
Yeah.
Lobo King?
King
Oh,
Lobo.
did you guys see that guy dressed up in the Lobo gear found the guy in the hat from the Boise
yeah.
game?
Mm.
And he
Yeah.
was really giving it to him. I'm surprised the guy in the hat did not knock that guy out. If someone was doing that in my face, it would take some self-control not to slap someone. But looked like they were all in good fun and the fans are keeping under control.
As an Aztec fan, I think Lobos win. We appreciate that. We appreciate you listening. Just being honest here, UNM is hot. I was going to make a joke there, but I'm not going to. We're going to see 1, 2, 3. We're going to hit them with a similar game plan that we had against Boise State. And I'm thinking Mash bounces back and we shoot well.
Yeah,
And
we all hope so, man.
He's due.
Jerry Palm does have the Lobos in. He has them in as Jerry Palm.
It was just beyond the first four in, or the last four in. I think.
Yeah,
right?
he has them last 4 buys. No, he doesn't have them in as the first 4. They are an 8-9 matchup against TCU. If they were to win that game in Jerry Palm's world, they would take on Zach Edey and Purdue, who
TCU is good too, man.
Francisco Chavez. Eric, sorry. Gonna be a battle. I have a good feeling about the game. If they come out like they've been, Palm is probably the highest on the Lobos. Yeah, he is. As we've said, Mike DeCourcy has them as an 11 seed in the first 4 against UVA. Hoping Dent is feeling better today. Guess flu bug. This is alleged. Guess the flu bug has been going around the team, all allegedly. We are not in Vegas. Probably the source for that would be Jared Chester of KRQE, who's a dear friend of the show, and I should have bugged him to join us, or Jeff Grammer. Again, that's alleged. I don't know that. I think there was allegedly that Nevada had it going around.
Is Donovan Dent 21 yet? Did he get the Vegas flu or the real flu? And if they win tonight, they better be going out on the town. Everyone that's of age. Patino better be treating those boys tonight if they win. I'm not going to say where they should go, but there's some nice establishments that they can visit.
What was the name of the strip club across from Resorts World? It was like
no idea what you're talking about.
I was
asking adult ballet theaters. So.
I've never heard adult ballet theaters. No, what was the name of that? It was across from Resorts World, Eric. When we were there for the conference media days, it was like a compound. It looked like a bunker.
I don't remember. It looked kind of trashy.
It had Las Vegas. Las Vegas is sexiest girls.
While we wrap that up, this is probably a good segue. We have a kind of a lot of viewers watching. We would all definitely appreciate you guys not only liking the episodes that we're posting out there, follow us on Twitter, give our YouTube page a follow, go ahead and subscribe to us. We try to come with UNM athletics content multiple times a week, really heavy on Lobo basketball now, but we will be looking to covering UNM baseball, softball, and then over the summer leading up to UNM football. So we just surpassed 300 subscribers. So join the club, and we'll continue to keep growing this thing. And we definitely appreciate everyone that's kind of followed along with us this entire season.
I've appreciated everybody. Our intent was to get together, and when I had a radio show, I said on 610 that it's not my show, it's your show. Twitter is a different animal with anonymous people who don't post their pictures and have my favorite at NM Sports Fan at Fan NM State Sports. I remain objective. I was about to I try to remain objective. I probably pull the old Troy Aikman where I'm so biased. I try to be so unbiased. I'm biased against the Lobos, whereas he's so trying to be so unbiased that he's biased towards the Cowboys. I what was I saying? I'm trying to stay on topic. I have a media background. Eric came to me and he just didn't feel the coverage in this town was good enough with covering UNM, especially with what you had with Lobo basketball and the anticipation. coming into this season. So I've appreciated everybody. It's been really cool. We all have day jobs. Eric is expecting another child. Congratulations. It's busy. But we've done the best we can. I tried to do this for
Future Lobo fan.
Yeah, future. My kid's going to engineering school. He's not going to watch sports. I've really appreciated everybody, and I don't say this enough. It's just a place for us to get together and bullshit about UNM. We want to expand our coverage to the Mountain West Conference. I think basketball wise, you need 5 to 6 teams in. That's impressive out of 11 teams. I don't even think it is impressive. It is impressive, but I didn't see anything, being done here. Eric Rick's in the Bay Area. I'm sure he probably, if he's on social media, he probably sees different 49ers fan bases, the Warriors, obviously. You have the Giants, who have won 3 World Series in the last 14 years. The San Jose Sharks have a massive rabid fan base, although they're probably the worst team in hockey. And I lived in, I'll get to that in a second. I just felt, and Eric, he came to me with this idea. I didn't feel like there was enough conversation about UNM. Jeff Grammer does do a good job. You watch local news, you've got 90 seconds of local sports. I don't know. We tried to do the best we can this year. I hadn't been sick in years, and I got the flu twice in 4 months, and it sucked. Or 3 months, and it sucked. Hey, Ice Baby, even though I call it, hey, stop, collaborate, and listen. Ice is Brown with a brand new invention. Thank you, Pit Press Podcast. You guys are amazing. We don't get that all that often. I appreciate it. To the Aztec fan, we appreciate it. Richard Patino said last night that Dent had the flu. I did not hear that. I'm going to take your word for that, allegedly. Miguel Sanchez, any truth to twittering about Lobo fans throwing stuff at CSU cheerleaders and numerous being tossed? I did not hear anything. I know some people there. I'd have to ask. I didn't hear anything about that. I made a comment about Lobo fans booing the airmen of Air Force Academy. They serve your country. I get you're probably liquored up and didn't attend a class at UNM, but to hear that, that's pretty sad. I always enjoy a good fan getting tossed story, but it doesn't reflect UNM well. It doesn't reflect the city of Albuquerque well. It doesn't reflect New Mexico well. I sound like a dad. Holy hell. But yeah, I don't know about that. All right. That was during the end of the game interview. I guess that's the tossing stuff at Colorado State cheerleaders. I don't know what the cheerleaders did to you in the crowd there. Anyway, predictions. We're about 30 minutes from tip. If you have any predictions, please feel free to write them in the comments on YouTube. Who do I want to start with? Neff, you haven't said anything in a hot minute. Eric, sorry, I'll go to you.
Yeah, before we wrap this up, if you guys are in Albuquerque, Bernalillo, Rio Rancho, and are looking for a place to watch the game, Turquoise Desert Tap Room. Armando's a great owner over there. They're a local establishment. They serve all local brews on tap. Really good food. And I think they have like 15, 16 TVs that they'll be showing the game. They've got surround sound. It's a really cool sports atmosphere, and they're a local establishment, man. So you can't really beat that. So if you're looking for a last minute place to do that, stop at Santa Ana Star Casino, place your bets, and then head over to the tap room and enjoy the game and some food, and let them know that the Pit Press crew sent you guys.
Yeah. Once again, I can't thank enough to the people that listen. We've come a long way in 14 months. And my opinions are not the opinions owned by our parent company, which is what we own, New Mexico Alumni Media, with the Pit Press is under that umbrella. We also have a high school show. Nick and Ed Nunez do that. Check it out. They couldn't join us today. Ed is in Silver City. He is the voice of Western New Mexico. He usually joins us. Predictions to the game. About 30 minutes again. UNM, San Diego State, Mountain West Conference Tournament Championship game. It's just like the old days. Aztecs, Lobos. Neff, your thoughts on today's game? Again, the spread is 2.5. San Diego State money line, I think, is 121 UNM. The over-under, man, the last 2 days, it was like 150. Today, obviously, with San Diego State, kind of the defense that UNM plays, it's down to 144. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I went back and forth with how I feel about the game. I know that Rick had made a comment about, the legs and, if they're all being 20 years old, whatever. I think there's a reason, and this is just my opinion. I think there's a reason why you haven't seen very many teams play all 4 days or make it to the championship, and that is because it is a little grueling. It can be tough on you, and one thing that I think UNM has tried to do, but I don't know how effectively they've done it throughout this tournament, is play the bench and expand it to try and keep their guys as fresh as possible. I think today, more than ever, it's going to require to have Mushila in the game a little bit. I think it's going to be imperative that they play probably a 4-man bench, because San Diego State plays about 5 guys off the bench. So I know that they're probably going to be the more fresh team. I would love to see the Lobos win this game. To me, I think San Diego State gets them. I think they're probably going to win the game in a close one. I'd probably say about 3 or 4 points. I think UNM will stay in it, but to me, I think I've got San Diego State just being a little more fresh, a little more deep, and that could be what causes the Lobos to just go down in the title by just a couple points, like I said.
Rick, throwing it over to you.
Yeah, I think the Lobos are going to come out energized, as we saw last night, possibly go on a run early. But there's going to be a point in the game where they're going to run out of gas, and San Diego State is going to have their chance to chip away at that and take the lead. And I think it's going to come down to free throw shooting and coaching. And unfortunately, I like Brian Dutcher decision making a little bit more as a coach at this point. But on the other hand, the way I saw House play last night, I've never seen that before, to be honest. And I'm not talking about the stat line. I'm talking about what was coming out of his head. Even the interview he did after the game was night and day difference from the night before. And to me, that means something. And I think that'll pass on to the rest of the guys when they kind of saw that. And I usually don't go with my emotion on these picks, but I'm riding the Lobos here, baby. Let's do it.
Sorry about that. Eric, to you. Or do you want me to go first, since I'm like the Lobo basher?
Yeah, no, I can go. I do like the Lobos in this one, just simply because I feel like they're the hungrier team. San Diego State's already in the tournament. Yeah, what Rick just said about House's interview post game was pretty solid, straight to the point. These guys are not wanting to just get to the tournament; they're wanting to make a run, and they're trying to knock down everything in their way in order to do that. It's going to come down to them playing an effective, efficient game. I think House is kind of like in his element right now, where we're seeing the really good House. The whole Dent flu thing is, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I think we need a healthy healthy dose of Dent tonight to get things rolling. Staying out of foul trouble. It's going to be a physical game, but I do think that Pitino might need to lean into his bench a little bit more and earlier tonight than he's probably used to, just to see how we can spare some of these guys, keep them fresh, keep some guys out of foul trouble too, because it's going to be a lot of bodies flying around everywhere. But I do like the Lobos in this one. I think they're the hungrier team, and they're playing a lot. They have a little bit more to play for, so that's why I'm sticking with the Lobos.
Here's Andrew Gonzalez, LFG Lobos, LFG Mets, LFGM. Mountain West Conference game. This is outdate. I wanted 2024 to listen to. I don't know if that's AI Martin or Al Martin. Don't follow you there, sir. I apologize. Man, I don't know how I feel. I think New Mexico needs it more. But I there's just certain players, there's certain coaches that usually make their mark on March. I think Brian Dutcher has become one of them. I've felt at times this year, it's, oh man, the San Diego State team looks dangerous. At other times, I'm like, who the hell is this San Diego State team? I don't really necessarily care about the freshness. I don't. That sounded terrible. Who's more rested? I don't know. Yeah, I know. I was waiting for somebody to make the Jordan flu comment. Jordan flu game comment. I see this going either way this evening in about 25 minutes. I can see UNM winning. I can see San Diego State winning. I've usually been pretty bold in where I'm going on these picks. I probably got to go with San Diego State. It's not. I'm not. Making it tough to say. I wouldn't be shocked if UNM could pull that out. I think they looked pretty damn good when they played San Diego State here in Albuquerque back in January. I just feel like sometimes I haven't been that impressed with San Diego State, but this is their territory. They've done it. They've been here. I feel with that. I still think that UNM probably belongs in the first four. I think they're probably going to Dayton. I think the committee will probably look at their body of work. But if you're so high on the conference and you rip off the wins that they have, especially on a neutral site like they have done in the last 48 hours, I don't know how you keep them in, how you keep them out. That's just my thought process there. I think it should be a good game. I think it should be an entertaining game. I hope we're not talking about the Mountain West Conference officials tomorrow when we do a recap podcast. And we'll probably do something post bracket. I don't, I have to figure out what we're going to do tomorrow. But for everybody that listened, whether you're in a Mountain West city, you're in Albuquerque, you're in Las Vegas, Nevada, you're in San Diego, if you're in America's finest city, we thank you for listening. We hope everybody enjoys the game. Again, please head over to our website. It's thepitpressnm.com. I know I'm looking to expand Mountain West Conference coverage going into next football season, this upcoming football season. Follow us on Instagram at the Pit Press NM and on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, at the Pit Press NM. Rick, you've joined me every day this week. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man.
Hope you
Thank
enjoyed
you
the
guys.
game.
Always a pleasure. And thanks to everyone tuning in here. Thanks for all the feedback.
That's a valid point. I just saw that comment. Neff, as always, man, thank you very much. And to Mr. Eric Moulton, everybody have a good one. Enjoy the game. We will talk to you post Mountain West Conference Championship game.